Hello, welcome to episode 5 of the Brand Spotlight. We are here interviewing Catherine of Spritz Tea. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on, Joe.
Sure. Thank you so much for coming on the Brand Spotlight for episode 5, so very early on. Just before we dive into the interview, I'll talk a little bit about our sponsor. Obviously, we're new, but we're using my agency as the sponsor. The agency is called Brands Connect. That's brands with a Z, BRANDZ. And it's actually interesting because this podcast was actually an outgrowth of the conversations I was having with companies about on the agency side of things. And what we focus on the agency side of things is to really craft custom marketing campaigns for the specific brand. We found that marketing campaigns have to really be tailored to the specific brand. Now let's get right back into the interview. Thank you so much for joining us again. And
Yes,
I already asked you how your day was, so we'll jump
going
right
well. Going well.
in. So the name of your brand is Spritz Tea.
Yes.
And I just want to know if you could describe just abstract or upper level, if you could describe your brand in a sentence or two, how would you describe your brand?
Yeah. So, hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Doherty, as Joe said. I'm the founder and CEO of Spritz Beverages Company, of which Spritz Tea is our flagship line of products currently testing in the market. One of our products I'm showing here on camera, I'll describe it for those who are listening through audio. This is a hibiscus tea, softly sparkling, so really lightly carbonated. What we're doing is combining kind of the best of the tea category with the bubbles and fun of the sparkling water category. So all of our products are 0 calories, 0 sugar, all natural ingredients. They're vegan and keto friendly. They're all tea based and all with just really light carbonation to kind of have a champagne level of bubbly. And so that's who I am. That's a really high level of what my company is and the product that we're currently testing to market.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So it's basically, if I understood, the main two aspects that you're putting together is bubbles / carbonation and tea, putting them together and putting it in a product.
And it can, yeah, exactly. Really fun contemporary flavors, all the health benefits of tea. All of our flavors are going to be, pomegranate and dragon fruit and guava and acai. We really try to bring fun contemporary flavor profiles into our products, really appealing to sort of the modern consumer.
Cool. So I'm going to get a little bit more into the brand mission. I noticed you used the word fun, contemporary, but fun a couple of times. How would you define that? And how do you not just define it, but how do you practically bring it into the can?
Yeah, so I think fun, when you look at kind of alcohol, champagne is fun. It's, there's the bottle that pops and you can use a saber to open it. And it's usually very celebratory. And it's kind of this fun, celebratory, exciting occasion. And for us, it's what we want to encompass is that kind of feeling, but in a non-alcoholic option. So many women, myself included, don't drink alcohol for a myriad of reasons, but we still want to have that kind of fun, fizzy taste of something that is little bubbles, that looks pretty in a glass. Our hibiscus tea in particular, again, which is going to be the pink can, that is going to be this beautiful rosé color. Looks just like, a sparkling rosé would, without having the alcoholic content. And so that's really where the word fun resonates, is it's celebratory, it's inclusive, it's not heavy, it's just really light and, fizzy.
Do you see it as an alcohol replacement?
Absolutely. That's how the product was created. I was looking for a non-alcoholic alternative while training for long course triathlons. And me and my girlfriends, none of us drank alcohol because it's just horrible for your training when you're getting up early and running or biking or swimming very long distances. But when we would have dinner parties or we'd get together for meals, we all still wanted something special to sort of complete the feeling of the meal as we sat down to it together. And so the origination of my product really was as an alcohol replacement.
Cool. So it sounds like we spoke about the brand mission. Now we're getting into the origin story of how the brand started. How long ago was that?
Well, I first created the concept back in 2016. But it took me a couple of years before I even considered moving it out of the kitchen and, just for myself and my friends and into something commercial. So I I made the concept first in 2016. It took me until the end of 2017 to even think of like an LLC and be like, maybe I should just explore this a little bit. We started research and development officially in 2018 with a beverage engineering firm. And then 2019 was spent figuring out commercialization plans. We went through shelf life testing, some kind of final stage market research. First capital in fundraise. We did a pre-seed fundraise. And we geared up for a launch, which we did in January of 2020. And that's kind of, so all the way from it, summer of 2016 until the very end of 2019 is how long I worked on this.
So summer of 2016 was when you came up with the concept, started experimenting in your kitchen, and then you did mention you had a seed launch. How far was that between experimenting and the seed launch?
Well, so 2016 was just sort of the experimenting at home in the kitchen. Late 2018 was when we started to be able to experiment with actually professionally formulated products with users. So that was going to be most of 2019 was going to be kind of our end consumer concept and use testing. And right now we're actually in true commercial pilot where we're being sold on shelves to see how we're performing, what price, we perform well at, what kind of promotion tactics are necessary. That's really kind of where we are in the development stage. So even though we have commercialized, we are still a very early brand. And we're truly kind of almost in the last stage of the innovation cycle.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, we have a lot to get to talk about that innovation cycle, but I guess we'll go back a little bit to the research and development. So you did you start experimenting in the kitchen, then you hired a firm that specializes. At what point did you have the taste tester, so to speak, actually try out your product?
Well, I mean, multiple steps along the road. So I had, versions of the product that I made at home. I started there. I had not just myself and my friends drinking it, but sort of anonymous people at my local gym. So this was before we brought on an engineering firm. This was truly just, I make it at home and give it to people and be like, what do you think of this idea of a sparkling tea? So we got consumer feedback there. Then as we went through the product development process, we spent almost a year refining all of our different flavors, of which we have 4 that we have on shelf now and a 5th one that's a seasonal flavor that we have not launched yet. So we spent almost a year developing those. And every time that we went through another iteration of the product, we would have samples shipped up to my home and myself, family, friends. We would then go through and we would test it and we would give feedback on acidity and earthiness and sweetness and aftertaste and all these different components of flavor that have to be considered when creating and designing a beverage product. So we went through that process. Then as we settled on our final formulations, we then had, I believe 100 cans, maybe 200 that were made in a lab of that formulation to then do one final kind of large scale consumer test just to be like, okay, are we really sure that like we've got something that's worth pursuing further? Like, let's just make sure before we go and start spending a lot of money on the next stage of this experiment. We had probably up until that point spent about $100,000, I'd say, all in between all the market research, all the engineering, formulation, testing, just branding, trademarking, all the things that kind of go into the foundation of building a business and a brand. And we knew that the next trigger was going to be a big one because you actually have to start to move into manufacturing at scale. So we did one final kind of large taste test process. That was, again, we probably did I'm trying to remember exactly, but I think over 100 people. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Came through, gave feedback, concept and use style, gave feedback on the concept, tasted the product, gave feedback on the product itself, likelihood to pay, likelihood to, talk about it, all those kinds of things. So that all led up. Yeah.
So you spent a tremendous amount of time on the market research aspect and research and development, R&D. That's been your really focus before really getting anywhere. And it sounds like you really bootstrapped from the beginning, going to your local gym. you did mention that you did spend, I think it was $100,000 just before you did anything really, just in the R&D
Mhm.
process. Was that all self-funded, if I may ask?
Yes, it
Oh, wow.
was. Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, so my background is R&D, so research and development from a product standpoint. So I've worked a lot in new product development in medical devices. So whether that's again super early stage concept work or later stage launch planning, that's really been my experience. And what I really love is the creation of new things, and understanding which ones do we think are going to have the highest chance of success, that are technically feasible, that are economically stable, all things that I used to do for my corporate job. And so
Oh,
applying
wow.
those principles to my company has been very helpful.
So it sounds like this was really your career, the R&D portion of the aspect of it, and you applied that to a product you wanted.
Yeah, very different scale, right? Because instead of having 10 millions of dollars, of budget, I've got a lot less. And you have to contract with engineering firms, and you don't have all that talent in house. But the rough structure is still very similar. And so, yes, to your point, I can't remember the exact total off the top of my head, but I'm going to say it's like maybe like 85,000, 90,000, somewhere in that kind of mark was everything that had been spent up until launch. And so that was, again, all of our market research, all of our product development, branding work, trademark, legal, setting up banking, pitch decks, pitch parties, all of those types of things to really make sure that I was in the right place to take this concept and move to the next kind of stage gate, which is bringing it into pilot in the market and now saying, okay, like it's real time. Let's put out some shelves and see if people buy it. Of course, we did that right before the pandemic hit, which was horrible timing, but that's kind of entrepreneurship. So yeah, that's about, and then we raised the rest of our pre-seed round, but all of that was self-funded by myself and my partner.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time on the R&D portion, a little bit about your background. I do want to get both a little bit more about your origin story and then a little bit more on your launch.
Okay.
Before that, I do want to mention that we are on LinkedIn Live, we are on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and we will be repurposed as a audio podcast. We do have a comment coming in on LinkedIn Live. I'm going to show it right here from Amansa Lansing. I love the concept. I can't pronounce this.
Equestrian.
Oh, you know it. And can
Yeah.
totally relate to wanting to have a fun drink without the downside of caffeine or alcohol. Thank you so much, Amansa, for your comment. The engagement really helps us.
And our hibiscus tea is an herbal tea, so it is caffeine free. And that, by the way, it's our pink guava flavor. Again, I'll sort of show it here on screen. But this is the original product that I made at home in my kitchen for me and my girlfriends, was the hibiscus tea with some different fruit juices and a little bit of carbonation. So that is exactly the use case that we were solving for.
Okay. Now I want to get a little bit more to the origin story of your brand. It's a tremendous amount of work to actually take a product, bring it to market. It does sound like part of the work you're already doing professionally, part of the skills of R&D you're doing professionally. So that's something career-wise you must have been driven to. But it's one thing to enjoy a fun beverage, and another thing to do the work to create a fun beverage. Where did that shift happen, and why did you decide on this specific product? You could have, with your background, you could have introduced many different products to the market, and you chose this one. And I understand that you wanted the fun, but everyone wants fun, a fun, good tasting product. And a lot of people want the alcohol-free version, but there's usually something a little bit deeper, and I want to get into that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you're exactly right. With my background in healthcare and medical devices, because there's two parts of the decision. Like part one, do I want to leave corporate America and move into entrepreneurship? And then part two, if I'm going to move into entrepreneurship, what do I want to start from a company standpoint? So the first decision was really driven less by a desire to start a beverage company and more by a desire to try to change the industry of entrepreneurship to reflect more women. I found it incredibly frustrating when I was on the corporate side to work with health tech founders that were pretty much exclusively, tech founders in Silicon Valley. And there's just not really any diversity. And it really bothered me to see that because I was on the other side of the table helping pilot these things. And I was like, man, like where are my people being represented as founders and raising capital and building companies? And I just started to kind of think a little bit about that. And I was like, if I want to see these types of changes in the world, like I can't just complain about it. I got to go do it. Like I need to go be a founder and figure out how to not just survive, but thrive as a female founder. And so that was kind of part of what really drove me to leave the very safe shores of corporate America and venture into this wild, wild west of entrepreneurship. And then to your point, kind of why did I decide on beverage? When I first was kind of going through this decision around what kind of company do I want to work on, I was very motivated by a couple of different things. One, is it going to do good? I know that sounds cheesy, but it's why I chose healthcare as an industry originally. I want to work in an industry that is somehow helping people with the most foundational and fundamental part of their life, which is maintenance of our healthcare and well-being. Everybody will have that moment in their life when they're like, wow, this really is the only body I've got. and we don't always appreciate that until it's too late. And I've just seen it so much especially in my career at J&J, how often people really don't understand the sanctity of life and how delicate our bodies are until you're sometimes past the point of no return. So how can I be part of the cultural change to help drive better health awareness, better eating, better movement, smoking cessation, all of these, sugar reduction, all of these things that are really major drivers of poor healthcare in America. How can I somehow help drive that? That was a big one for me. So at the time I was like, okay, maybe I'll work into something around health tech. Maybe it'll be health coaching. Maybe it'll be a new kind of medical device that can help drive better decision-making in the operating room. Like it could be any kind of combination of product, which was what I did development on, and tech, which is where I worked at J&J on kind of the corporate side of supporting and mentoring tech entrepreneurs and potentially marrying the two into like smart devices. I thought a lot about some of those different things. And all while thinking about healthcare and what could I do in the healthcare space that I was passionate about. I had led a huge initiative around lung cancer screening back at J&J, and I had lost my grandmother to it. I thought a lot about that and what could I have done to save her, and like that was very motivating for me. So I'm doing this whole thing and this whole ideation process while sitting at my dining room table, drinking this beverage I kept making for myself and that my girlfriends loved and I loved. And I was always like, man, why can't I buy something like this? This is such a great way to, reduce alcohol intake, reduce sugar intake, have these healthier options, avoid aspartame, avoid sucralose, saccharin. And again, I kind of pulled from some of my own experiences where like I used to I could probably pound 8 Diet Cokes in a morning. It's not good. And like, I was like, I'm melting my insides, putting these chemicals into my body. And so I cut that out. And, a lot of people in my life drink a lot of high sugar beverages and have corresponding medical conditions as a result of such high sugar consumption. So, no sugar. And we all probably know somebody who's struggled with some form of alcohol abuse. And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation even just recently found that there's not really any safe level of alcohol for consumption. And so I'm sitting there thinking about like products and services that I could create that would do good in this world around the industry of health and well-being, something I'm extremely, extremely passionate about, drinking this product that I was like, oh, I mean, this could be a way people could like cut back on caffeine and sugar and alcohol. And what if I made a beverage company? And I had no idea how on earth to do this. Zero. I also had no idea how big the beverage market was. That was one of the first things that I was like, I mean, how many cans of like Diet Coke can be sold in a year? It can't be that many. It can't be as big as medical devices. Oh my gosh, no, was I wrong? The US ready to drink non-alcoholic market. So United States ready to drink, meaning it's not the coffee beans, it's not the soda stream, it's not the tea bag. It's things that are in a can that you open. And then non-alcoholic, obviously. So this cuts out your whites, your White Claws and your seltzers and your alcohol. That market alone, US ready to drink non-alcoholic, is $360 billion a year. And my head exploded when I heard that. And then when you start to whittle that down into looking at specific subcategories like sparkling water or iced tea, and you look at specific consumers like women who are health conscious and willing to pay a premium for products and beverages that better align to their lifestyles, you're still looking at a $10 billion plus market size. And I looked at that and I said, oh my gosh, this is me as a consumer. I'm the person who stands in front of the beverage set and goes, I don't see anything that I like. I see sparkling waters, yes, that are healthy, but they are boring. I see soda, which, yes, I loved because it tastes so good, but it's horrible for me. I see tea, which is great. It's functional, but typically full of sugar. And also I love bubbles. And I see alcohol, but I'm really trying to cut that out. And so I stand there and I look at the set and I'm just like, I don't see me, the modern female, reflected in this. I want something that's healthy, that's celebratory, that is frankly packaged in a pretty can. I don't want, a Red Bull or a Bang Energy. I am not that consumer. I'm a different consumer. And I don't see myself reflected. And it kind of hit me that I was like, man, like maybe I should explore this whole beverage thing just a little bit. And, you start to kind of pull at a thread a little bit. And little by little, you're like, okay, well, I mean, I could do this. And I guess I could do that. And I could do this third thing. And suddenly you're like, well, I guess I'm a beverage entrepreneur. And yeah, here I am now running this company where, like I said, we're in our final stage of innovation and testing. And I never thought I would end up in beverage given my background. But I think what they all have in common, and I think what's important for anybody listening, is to really understand what motivates you. What are you passionate about in life? And for me, I've watched families struggle. I've watched friends struggle with health issues very personally. I've lost people for that. And I've also, given my background, seen people who are going through really, really difficult treatments and procedures to try to correct for those choices. And I see their friends and family in the waiting room, waiting for the person that they love and care about to come out of the OR. And there's just nothing more motivating to me than trying to enable people to live not just long lives, but good quality lives where you're able to move your body and play with your kids and feel good about yourself and take care of yourself. That for me has always been like the piece of sort of silver thread through everything that I've done in my career.
Thank you so much for sharing that whole journey with us. You really took us through all those moving parts. I just want to recap it a little bit. It sounds like initially you were in the health space, specifically in the R&D. Mm-hmm. You were ready to leave that space, and you did mention like you did see a lack of diversity, a lack of females in the leadership positions in that space. So you were ready to leave that space and go within that space on your own, meaning you still wanted to be in the health space. But beverage was definitely not the thing you were thinking about. But as you were progressing and looking at your different options, you started making, it sounds like around the same time, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, you started making your own sparkling tea.
Yeah, would have only been a few months apart when I had the sudden kind of desire to move into entrepreneurship. And I think it was only a few months prior to that I had started making this product to solve an unmet need of me and my triathlete friends.
Cool. So it sounds like once you were making the product, it just became, and then you started learning about the industry. It became a no-brainer, and you saw the lack or your lack of finding the product on the shelf. It became a no-brainer to try to figure out how to bring it to market.
Yeah. I mean, it was a decision that, is always multifactorial around what is this going to do for my career? What is it going to do for my life? Do I have the personal support to be able to do something like this? I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur to have support, family support, financial support, people, mentors and advisors who will help guide you in this process. So really considering all of that, and I had to take all of those circumstances into consideration before making that leap. And yeah, I left my J&J job at the end of 2019 to do this full time.
Cool.
It was a big decision.
Wow. That's amazing. That's courageous of you.
It was scary. It still is scary. Yeah.
Now, a little bit more in and a little bit of the origin story and a little bit of the R&D process. I noticed you mentioned that you yourself were drinking a lot of high sugar sodas.
Mm-hmm.
You did mention you weren't drinking alcohol because you were training to be a triathlete.
Mm-hmm.
Did you drink alcohol before then, if I may ask?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had given up my Diet Coke habit in 2013, I think. Cold turkey one day when I was like, I think I've drank 12 Diet Cokes and it's 1:00 in the afternoon. I think it's time. I think we have a problem. But yeah, with, red wine, it's kind of my go-to. But when I move into like a full training season, at that time I was training for a half Ironman. So just really kind of heavy training. I usually cut out all alcohol. Yeah.
And you wanted that, but it sounds like you did miss that experience that you wanted to recreate with this product.
Yeah, like I love dinner parties. I love, the pretty tablecloths and all the little forks and spoons and all the pretty servingware. And when you set a beautiful tablescape like that, you kind of want the gorgeous wine glasses or champagne flutes or coupe glasses right there on the table as well. But just having water is kind of like, it doesn't feel complete. And so being able to have something that you could still, lift a glass and cheers your friends, toast to a great week or a great upcoming workout or, whatever, really is kind of a nice moment in an evening that disappeared and was looking to be brought back in some way that still fit our particular, diet of what we ate and what we didn't eat.
Do you feel that this product completely replaces alcohol, or do you think alcohol still has its place? And is this product missing something that alcohol has?
Well, probably the alcohol. I think that what's amazing about beverage is that there are such a wide set of preferences. So you have people who love the taste of Red Bull. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who love the taste of coconut water. I personally don't like either of those. I like kombucha, which my dad thinks is the grossest thing in the world. Everybody has different palates. And so wine or alcohol in general, especially like a brown liquor of some kind, scotch or a bourbon, are going to have really, really kind of unique taste to them that certain parts of a palate you're just never going to really be able to recreate without that particular ingredient. So from a taste standpoint, I don't think that you'd ever really truly be able to replicate some old bottle of bourbon in a non-alcoholic format. I just don't think that's probably chemically possible. And then the other thing is, of course, the actual, what you would call the functionality of beverages, which is sort of what do they do? Coffee gives us caffeine, right? Kombucha gives us probiotics. wine's gonna get you a little drunk. And that's what I would argue is the functionality of alcohol, which there are some companies that are looking to utilize, I mean, obviously there's some THC entrants, CBD. There's some other ingredients, I want to say L-theanine, that are being experimented with to give sort of a more, not a buzz, but a bit of a kind of calming effect without having the destructive effects of alcohol. But again, we've had alcohol for how many millennia as a species? It's probably not ever going to go away.
Cool. You did mention kombucha and something that you actually like. I'm just curious why you chose to go into bubbly tea and not kombucha if you like that anyways.
Yeah, a couple of reasons. So the first one is kombucha is a cold chain product. So it's just a lot harder to distribute because kombucha has to be kept cold. It is not shelf life stable or is not shelf stable or able to have long shelf lives. Whereas my product is able to sit on a shelf just like a LaCroix. So that's one, is just the complexity of a kombucha is much harder. Second is that the kombucha space has a lot of entrants. You've got big brands in it. You've got small brands in it. There are not really any leaders in sparkling tea yet. And so you don't have to quite battle the big incumbents in your specific set. Now, the downside, of course, is that there isn't a sparkling tea set in a grocery store. There's kombucha sets. There's the bottled tea set, which is what I go in. But you don't actually have space really carved out for a product like mine yet. So lots of pros and cons, but I ultimately settled on a product that I believe has more kind of broader appeal since, again, I love kombucha, but I know a lot of people don't, that has a little bit more ease of manufacturing and logistics, and that has an opportunity to not be totally squashed by the bigger brands in the space. So that's why I ended up with this one.
Why do you think that is, that there's no category yet in the supermarket for sparkling tea? Why are you the first one, so to speak, or one of the first?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even just, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, like the sparkling water set was brand new. 10 years ago, the kombucha set was brand new. People hadn't done those things yet. And I think that a product like mine would not be able to have any kind of success if the sparkling water set hadn't had success, right? Like it's so much of an iterative process of kind of building upon, the prior generation. And so maybe there's a future where there's a functional sparkling tea set. I don't know. But like that would be built off of a sparkling tea set, which was built off of a sparkling water set, which was built off of a water set, and being able to look at how the different categories within the beverage groups be able to kind of ebb and flow. Like what's disappearing, what's coming back, what's getting cut, what's performing, what's not. A lot of traditional soda, for example, is contracting. They are reducing those set sizes to make room for more healthy drinks because that's where consumers are going.
Wow. So it sounds like it's more of a market timing. It's much more of market timing, but it's still a challenge because you're essentially building out this category.
Right. Totally. I mean, and that's, if we had tried to bring out, a ready to drink sparkling tea 100 years ago, we would have never been successful ever because consumers wouldn't want bubbles unless maybe you were in France. Nobody had an appreciation for the impact that sugar is going to have on our lives. So like, why would you, sugar is delicious. Like sugar is so yummy. I love sugar. I would eat it all the time if I could, but it's not good for me. So I don't. But there was no reason not to have these great sugary drinks because we didn't know what it was going to do to our bodies. There are so many examples of kind of better for you soda brands that launched in the past 30 years that failed because the consumer just wasn't there yet. And so, you look at like an Olipop, or what's the other one I'm thinking of? Poppy's a prebiotic. An Olipop. Let's take Olipop. That is kind of a better for you soda essentially, which is they're looking to take Coke but make it kind of more modern, a little bit more playful of a brand personality and healthier. But if you had asked Olipop to compete against Coke 20 years ago, nobody would have chosen Olipop because they're like, but Coke tastes better. There's so much more sugar in it. Of course it's delicious, you know? And so you have to wait for consumers to be more educated on what they need. And that can only happen when people have taken the time to study the impact of sugar on the body. And so we just didn't, like, consumers didn't know because nobody knew. I mean, the same thing is true of smoking, right? Like, it takes a long time for a company, you know, creates a product. Everyone's like, this is great. I love this. And it takes decades before you can really start to understand the impact of certain ingredients or, you know, products on our lives, because you don't have those longitudinal studies when products like this come out. And so it takes time, because then you have to like actually go through all the research and be like, oh, sugar's killing us. This is awful. Then you have to go educate people. You have to work against the lobbying organizations that want to keep sugar everywhere. It's just a very, very slow process. And so you got to wait for there's just sometimes these things are out of your control, where you have to just take what's on the market today and how can I make it incrementally just a tiny bit better. And, you know, that's what we're trying to do. Here's what we're at. Here's where consumers still have unmet needs. And how can we start to just push that market forward a little bit more and more and more towards healthier and healthier options.
Wow. That was that's such a nice overview of the state of the market, and really where a company needs to be to really create a new category. It sounds like they have to be at the edge of where the consumer is knowledge-wise.
That's really a great place to be. You know, if you try and jump too far ahead, you're gonna have to spend so much time on education to teach people how to use your products. I mean, if you look at like a typical adoption curve, you know, there's like the early adopters, right? It's really cool to make things that early adopters like, but if you don't get enough early adopters and you don't start to move into the masses pretty quickly, you're going to end up in a rough spot. And so super, super cutting edge technology is always really exciting from a research and development standpoint, but you have to have those incremental steps to move the consumer or the buyer of any of these goods towards, you know, that end goal. It takes time.
Wow. So now I want to move a little bit more into the launch phase. Did you launch I think you said you had 4 flavors and 1 seasonal. Did I get that correctly? Yeah. Did you launch all those at the same time, or did you launch 1 flavor? How did that go?
So we started off with 2 flavors. We started off with our green tea and our hibiscus tea. So our green tea is golden peach. It's a peach, lemon, pomegranate green tea. And then our herbal tea is our hibiscus. So that's pink guava. So that's going to be guava, dragon fruit, and mango with a hibiscus tea. Those were our 2 brands that we launched off the bat. We would have loved to launch all 4 or all 5, but we're trying to do this experiment as efficiently and thoughtfully with capital as possible. And so we thought, why not just launch the absolute minimum run size, see how we do with those. And if then we're seeing good uptake, then let's go ahead and roll out the additional SKUs. So we did a first pilot run of 25,000 units of golden peach and 25,000 units of pink guava. And we did that in December of 2019, and we launched in January of 2020. We let those 2 products sort of sell through over the next few months, looked at what kind of retailer interest there was. It was really positive. And so that gave us the confidence to move into our next production run in June of 2020, where we then did 25,000 units of all 4 SKUs. So that is when we then brought our wild acai, which is a white tea with acai, rose, and mango, and bright citrus, which is our black tea with lemon, raspberry, and strawberry to market. So that's when we had all 4 SKUs. We have not launched our seasonal flavor yet for a variety of reasons. We're just really continuing to kind of prove out concept with the 4 that we have, and adding a 5th flavor would just be a little bit too complex right now. But we have it ready for when the time's right.
We're looking forward. Why did you choose those 2 out of the 4 flavors, or really out of any flavors you could have done? Why did you choose those 2 flavors?
I chose the hibiscus tea because it has the broadest use case, because it's caffeine free. You can have it at 11 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock in the morning. And that to me is just, the opportunity to really have it enjoyed in multiple ways and throughout your day, gave it the greatest chance of success. The second one we chose was the golden peach one, and that was because it's a green tea, and green tea is the most heavily consumed form of tea. And so again, just trying to sort of put our best foot forward into the market. The last thing we wanted was to get, a false negative, which was like, well, this isn't working, but really we maybe did have something. So that's how we selected those two, was the hibiscus tea, which is going to be, with lack of caffeine, the easiest to consume throughout the day. And then the green tea, because it's the, most highly consumed tea flavor.
So the broader the appeal, the more that was
Exactly.
really your criteria for launching.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you did say you made two, basically you made a production run for those two flavors to test the market.
Mm-hmm.
Were you selling in stores, online, your website, Amazon? What was the split over there?
Yep, omni-channel. So we did retail, online, Amazon, all of it. So we, when we launched in January, our original go-to-market plan was to sell predominantly in food service and in grocery stores. Of course, our timing was poor. When COVID happened, all grocery stopped reviewing and bringing in any new products. So that basically got put on hold for about a year and a half. And then food service just kind of shut down. All the restaurants closed. So last thing they're caring about really is whether or not they need a new beverage in their set. So we switched really quickly to direct to consumer as best as we could into Amazon. Beverage is a really tricky product to use in those channels for kind of two reasons. One, it's a highly substitutable good. So people aren't going to, like, when's the last time you bought a beverage online? Like if you go to the store and they're out of LaCroix, you're not like, oh, let me go to LaCroix.com. You're like, all right, I'll take the Waterloo, like you just substitute the brand. So that's kind of number one. And then second, the unit economics of managing an online beverage business are not great because you're basically shipping water and water is really heavy. And so we did that really more to just kind of continue to gather consumer feedback and get a sense of like what's working, what's not working, what do people like, what do they not like. But that was a really, really challenging start for us. It really cost us almost about a year and a half of runway and time, not to mention product, it doesn't last forever. And so some product that we produced, we had to, write off and donate to the local food shelter, which is amazing. But, we ideally wanted to sell that. And so we just had to kind of respond to what was happening and figure out how to push forward. And so direct to consumer is a really, really small part of our business now. Most of our business is in grocery. So we are in just shy of 200 Kroger stores right now. We're in, maybe 20 Central Market in Texas, all the Pete's Fresh markets, probably 200 other kind of miscellaneous locations, cafe shops, fast casual, healthy bakeries, is really all the places that we sell right now, all of our points of distribution.
So initially when you went and got into the food service, I know you said you had basically a year and you started it and then you essentially had to pause that space for about a year and a half. How did you have those initial connections? You knocked on doors, you hired a distributor, you hired a broker. What was that process like?
All of those, all three. So the stage of company that we were at for, testing concepts, what we needed more than anything was to get on shelf. We could not decide whether or not we had a concept worth pursuing or not if we did not have the next stage of data. We knew we had great qualitative, great quantitative. We have great concept and use data. We've got great market sizes. We know all of that. The last kind of piece of the puzzle is actual on-shelf performance. And so we really, if you think of it as a science experiment, which is essentially what this is, you cannot finish the science experiment and say, yes, we have something, let's go raise more money and make it big, or no, the concept didn't quite resonate. Let's try and figure out something else. You can't make that decision effectively unless you have in-store performance data. And we didn't have any because we weren't in any stores. We would have a couple like stores here and there, and that was great. And they're amazing supporters of us early on. But you need large scale data to really understand, like, statistically significant, did we perform or not? And, for us, that really became then the number one thing to do was like, we have to get a large account. We have to. And all the traditional ways of doing it were gone. Category reviews were canceled. Trade shows were canceled. Like it just wasn't happening. Like there was no way to get on shelf. And so we had a sales director who did up and down street work. But that was hard because nobody's taking sales calls, right? Nobody wants to be talking to anybody in person. We had broker partners who...
Let me just clarify. Salesperson who did up and down street work, that's literally knocking on doors in the neighborhood, mom and pops, I assume.
Yep, exactly. Yep. There's that. Then we had a broker that did, enterprise, like key account stuff. They were the ones who helped try to like find large scale pilots, but they had the same issue we had, which was just like, nobody's doing reviews. Nobody's doing resets. Nobody cares about what we need to swap out in beverage right now because we're just trying to figure out what the heck is happening right now in the world. Like, should we be hoarding toilet paper or not? Should we be drinking Lysol or not? Should not be drinking Lysol. Like they're just, what do we do when an employee is sick? What are our policies? What do we do if a customer refuses to wear a mask? Like they're trying to navigate all of that. They don't care about the beverage reset. I care, but they don't. Understandably so. So we tried brokers. We also tried investing in very heavy B2B public relations to say like, okay, could we like get some really, really great press and maybe try and generate some interest that way? That didn't work either. Again, same issue. And then the last one that we tried, which was a tough one, was basically loading up distribution centers. So how that works is, in my industry, what you typically do is you land a retailer and the retailer goes, okay, great. Who's your distributor? And you're like, it's this person. They're like, all right, great. So you go and you put product into the distributor's warehouse, and then the retailer orders your product from the distributor. What was happening was we were in this chicken and egg thing where the retailer was like, yeah, are you in distribution? And we're like, no, but we will be as soon as we have an anchor. And they're like, when you get distribution, call us. And we were like, okay, got it. And so you just kind of keep like getting that. And so you're like, all right, well, we just might have to like load up a distribution center, put product in there, and then go to a retailer and be like, hey, we're stocked in your distribution center. Would you like to purchase it? That experiment sort of worked. The good side to it was it did make it easier for us to get into some stores. The bad side is that when you put in $10,000 worth of product into a distribution center without a retailer, if you don't land a retailer soon, all that product goes out of date and you don't sell it and you have to reimburse a distributor. And so it became almost as costly as the broker, actually possibly more costly, to try that tactic. However, we were able to land a few large pilot accounts that way, to be able to say again, yep, okay, next data point. We landed them. The buyers love them. That's great. That information was the final straw for us to be able to then land our big fish pilot, which is Kroger. This is going to be the final decision point for my company, is how we continue to perform on shelf here. What we want to see is a competitive, performance relative to other brands. So we want to be able to show that we're selling more than them. We want to be able to show that we are driving more margin to Kroger than our competitors. It's very easy to sell more than somebody if you cost 10% of what the other brand costs. We are not that. We are a premium product. So if we can compete at a premium price with a brand that's sold for half the cost of us, Kroger loves that, because that means instead of buying product A, they bought product B, and Kroger made more money. That's called increasing basket size. If we can show that, and if we can show growing velocities, which means, over weeks people are buying more of our product, that indicates adoption on the end of consumer. If we can show those metrics, which are looking to be hit right now, that means that we now have, very exciting, that we have product market fit. It doesn't mean that we are making tons of money. It doesn't mean that, we're about to all become bajillionaires. It means that our experiment has been successful, and now we need to find the funding to take this experiment and actually begin to truly commercialize it here in the Midwest. That is absolutely not guaranteed, because anyone who's been following the financial markets of late knows that a significant amount of venture capital, which is the kind of capital that typically is infused into a company like mine, has pretty drastically dried up. And so we'll have to see what the market says. But the idea is, we've successfully completed our experiment. And so now do we take this concept and say, great, we now have the money to go out and truly commercialize at a broad level? Or no, that money just does not exist right now. We need to figure out if we need to put it on a shelf and come back to it later when the market is better. This is going to be the next really big decision point for my company.
Wow, that sounds like a very arduous journey that you've been through. So congrats on that. But I want to dive a little deeper into the stocking, the distributors.
Sure.
I assume the chicken and egg scenario where is essentially you have to create the distributors only want to carry you if you have demand within the retail stores. The retail stores only want to carry you if they could just click a button on their distributor login thing and say ship 10 cases or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you alluded to the fact that it was actually a loss leader getting into the distributor. But however, it does sound like that's what got you into Kroger. So it could have been worth it. Did I get that correctly?
Very expensive loss leader. But yes, you're correct, because what that did for us was have enough small proof points of smaller chains that we had distribution to at least get us a meeting with the Kroger buyer, which was what we were struggling so much to get, because there weren't trade shows, there weren't category reviews, there weren't all these other things, these traditional pathways to get in front of a buyer. And so it's being able to say, we've got these distribution centers open, we're selling at these smaller retailer chains, here's our product, here's the market size. Like, because you can imagine at that time, everyone's like, hey, I have this great new concept, right? And being able to say, like, we have distribution and we have some data, right? Not tons of data, but we have some data, was enough to get us to break through the probably hundreds of submissions that are showing into somebody's inbox weekly to say, like, all right, send us some samples. That's the first step in the process. And then once we were down that, we could be like, here's our product. We're local. We're female founded. Here's where we would fit in the Kroger set. Kroger's headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I live here in Columbus, Ohio. And that was really like that first little kind of spark that helped us be able to then land a pilot with Kroger. This is the most important thing for us.
Now, why would the distribution center allow you to load them? I assume that, I don't know exactly what that means. Mm-hmm. I think you used that word or something like it. Yeah. That means that you actually came there with the product and paid for the loading of those products, and they essentially had a guarantee. It sounds like you said you'd have to refund. They essentially had a guarantee.
Yep. That it was guaranteed to be sold. Yep.
Interesting. So the only thing they're risking is really inventory space.
Warehouse space.
Warehouse space. But that's going to go out as soon as the expiration is done.
Yep.
So they have a very, very specific risk. So you're risking all your inventory.
Everything. Yes, correct.
Now, you did mention you did have a B2C strategy that was almost like you were forced to. You're just trying to do anything and everything to get the bottle in people's hands. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you've since moved away from at least pursuing that in an aggressive form, at least. But during COVID, your hands were tied and you were doing that. How did that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole fulfillment process that at the time, we weren't planning to do a heavy direct-to-consumer push. So we didn't have a fulfillment team, which means I was the fulfillment team. So endless hours were spent in a very cold garage in the winter with gloves on, packing, taking corrugate boxes, opening them, taping it up, putting product in, printing out packing slips, putting in the paper, sealing them up with my industrial tape dispenser that's sitting right behind me because I still use it. Printing out shipping labels and going to UPS with my little hand truck, 3 times a week. This is not fun, but that's kind of what you do. And so we just did it. We didn't really have a choice. And thankfully now we've been able to partner with our local distributor to do all of our online fulfillment. So they now will receive orders, pick, pack, process, ship out through UPS, and then we reimburse them for the product. Plus we pay them a fulfillment fee on top of it for every case ordered. But we did not have that infrastructure built out because that wasn't going to be a big part of our strategy. Where we are now, our direct consumer, I would say the business is going to be, we're always going to have it. It's great for people who want the product that aren't in an area where we have distribution. You're going to get the best prices online through a subscription model. That's where the cheapest price is going to be. But in order for that to really be a profitable business, we'd have to have very, very limited customer acquisition cost. We just don't have the gross margin that other big online brands are going to have to be able to compete on Instagram ads and Facebook ads and all that stuff, because our shipping costs are so high. So if you have a brand that, you make 80% gross margin on, including shipping, you can spend a bunch of your P&L on customer acquisition. I would guess offhand that we're looking at a 35% gross margin after shipping for our products for online. And that's if you're not shipping it to California, which is very expensive to ship to.
How did you just list it on Amazon, etc., and get stuff, or did you actually did you take an active role in marketing when you launched, at least at that COVID part, and today are you doing that?
Yeah, so for our own branded store, spritztea.com, we run all of that. So all that fulfillment goes through our warehouse. All of the marketing to that through social media or SEO is all done by our team. The other kind of online marketplaces like Amazon, for example, we have partners for those. So just think of them as a distributor. If Amazon is the retailer, I have a distributor. So I sell the distributor product. They list it on Amazon. They manage it. Amazon gets a chunk. The distributor gets a chunk. And I get a really small chunk at the end. But it allows us to at least have that web presence. Again, online is just not our big focus area. It just doesn't make sense as a channel with the cost of shipping what it is and the relative price point of my product. If my product was $10 a can, I absolutely would invest a heck of a lot more into shipping, into online. If shipping was significantly less expensive, same thing. But we just don't have the margin to be able to invest into customer acquisition and compete in that area.
So it only makes sense to be available online, but not to actually market and pay money to get people to come online. It sounds like there is a small profit margin for being available online, and that's where it's really limited at.
Exactly.
And, if people come online and buy it, great. If they see it in the store and then they go online, great. But it's really going to have to be, just because of the way the shipping is, it's really going to have to be driven by the stores.
We are not we have, pre-seed capital, but we are not a heavily funded, venture capital backed company, which means we are not doing the growth at all costs model. It's not about top line for us. I mean, top line is super important, yes, but we have to be really aware of all of our channels of business and what the respective profitability or unprofitability is in them. And we have to think really carefully about that. If I was a venture-backed company, I might say, yeah, of course, I'm going to go spend $10 to acquire a customer that I'm going to make $8 on. It's horrible financials, but it's going to completely puff up my top line. I have to look at it more as what's going to move me towards a sustainable company as quickly as possible. And if I have only $10 to spend, am I going to spend it to get a person online order my product, or am I going to spend it on coupons at Kroger where I can get 10 consumers to buy that product with $1 off coupon? Those are the decisions that in a company like mine that's not a big, venture capital company, Those are the real decisions you have to make. It's not like we're going to do all of them. We're going to do them all now. It's like I had the budget to do one thing and I have 100 options and I got to pick the best one.
Nice. Now, I do want to move a little bit to more things. One in terms of marketing and bring it to market, and another in terms of finance. I'll first discuss bring it to market. I notice a lot of food and beverage brands, they feel they need to actually demo the product. People need to actually taste the product.
Mhm.
It sounds like your goal is more to get it on shelves and see how it does on shelves without even the demo. Am I missing something? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it depends a lot on the category. So there's a phrase in the beverage industry that's called liquid on lips, right? It's the concept of trial. So people might look at the product and they might go, "Oh, this is interesting," and then they're going to want to try it, and then they're going to decide whether or not they want to adopt it. So there's a couple of different principles that can be applied to my industry versus others. So my product is low cost. So if someone buys my product and they're like, I don't like it, they're out like $2, you know? It's not like you're making an investment in something really expensive. So that's going to be part of the decision making is if the consumer is about to spend $100 on something, they might want to sample it first before they have that larger expense. The second thing is going to be availability for demoing elsewhere outside of the grocery store. So my product, again, is sold in a lot of cafes and coffee shops and bakeries, which means a consumer will have possibly tried my product already at a place where there's limited options. They're there, they want a cookie, they want a drink. All right, I'll just grab this one, see what this is. I'll give it a try. So I have some options for demos that are built in kind of to my particular product that other brands might not have. The other considerations, of course, are going to be cost. Demos have changed a lot since the pandemic. They used to be way less expensive. So you could do demos. You could have one can could serve 12 consumers because you get 1 ounce of the liquid each. Now it's one can for one consumer. So because you can't be having people sharing things. And so the cost of the actual product has gone up a lot. The cost of labor has gone up. You have to now consider like the shields and everything that's been going on. And so the cost of demos and ultimately the cost has gone up, the return has dropped because instead of getting this, awareness and trial for a reasonable cost, you're now going to be spending an exorbitant amount of money for the same awareness and trial. Also the advance of sort of online shopping, whether it's, Instacart or Kroger pickup or any of those has also diminished the value of demos because fewer consumers are in stores. And so being able to put our money towards an Instacart ad or a Kroger digital coupon goes a lot farther than spending that money on a demo in store.
So it sounds like there's really 2 parts of it. Number one, because of the nature of your product and the price point, you essentially have the option that people are paying to demo it. They're paying to try it and they're fine with that. And they're happy to do that. It's not
the curiosity is enough of an interest for them.
Yeah. And I have a follow-up question. And I'll say the next part of it is that it's actually become very expensive for you to demo. So those 2 things make it a no-brainer to not demo.
Absolutely.
I do want to follow up. I do have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
But in this case, that means that the real value of the real in-store data only comes after the buyer is there the second or third time, because the first time it was more of a test of is it intriguing enough for me to buy it?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So it sounds like you're waiting for that. Now, as I mentioned before, I have another question about the financial aspect. You did mention a number of times raising money.
Yep.
Are you limited to raising money, or is there a scenario in which you're able to just make production as consumer demand based on the profitability of the actual cans?
No, unfortunately not. Between our cash flow, we are very, very negative cash flow. We have to put capital out for raw materials 6 months before we get end payment from our retailer. So we have huge working capital gaps. A second, we're not profitable. We're a startup, we're an experiment. So we do not have profitability to put back into the company, even if we didn't have even if we had cash flow sorted out or we had profitability sorted out. So we really have to, traditional debt and banking is going to help us a little bit with some of the working capital stuff, but it does not solve for the fact that we're an experiment. And so for us, we will have to fundraise again, a seed round, and make that decision of, whether or not we take this concept further. I would love to find a way to, within hopefully 1 to 2 years, hit that break-even point and be able to be profitable and then just use bank loans to bridge working capital. But we're not there yet. We still have a lot of other questions that have to be answered before that around, can we continue to scale? Are we going to continue to be adopted? Do we have the right on-price shelf point? I think are still some things we're working through.
Cool. Have you looked at other non-traditional routes of fundraising, whether it's equity crowdfunding, etc.?
We've looked into equity crowdfunding. We may be pursuing that. The upside to that is, obviously it kind of democratized, funding into venture capital for people that are non-accredited investors. However, there's a lot of legwork that has to go into equity crowdfunding, and time is one of the tightest, most closely monitored assets we have. And so if we're able to raise the necessary funds to achieve our next milestone through, angel or micro VC route, that's going to be a bit of a cleaner cap table. It's going to be you're going to get more strategic value out of those partners. You're going to get advice, you're going to get network. So we might go the equity crowdfunding down the road. But I think that would be a secondary option to the preferred one, which would be the more traditional, micro VC angels.
Oh, wow. So at this point, you're in a bunch of Kroger stores. I forgot how many.
189.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of stores. And you're looking to see how that pans out. I assume that's going to be in the next couple coming weeks, coming months.
Wrapping up the summer season. We'll see what the final results were. Yeah.
And then you're going to go and then you're going to use that data to raise more money. It does sound to you like you already raised. How much, if I may ask, how much did you raise so far?
Yeah, we did a total of $500,000 in pre-seed that has now covered 2019, 2020, 2021, and all of 2022. Okay. So what was supposed to be a year and a half of runway, we have stretched razor thin to almost 4 years.
Wow. Do you know how much you envision raising after you get the data back?
We'd like to raise 1.5 to expand within the Midwest. So taking our Kroger business up into Michigan as the next market, opening up the Meyer market, looking to expand more up and down street distributors. And then I'd like to personally take the price down about 50 cents across the board for the end consumer to start, I think, fitting a little bit better into where the set sits right now.
What, did I ask you this before? What is the price point?
We range anywhere from $1.99 to $3.49. And I'd really like us to be on shelf at Kroger around $2.29. I'd like us to be on shelf in a natural grocer around $2.49. And if you're going to be a grab and go cold case at a, vegan, cafe or whatever, that should be a $2.69 to $2.99 at most. I'd really like all of our product to be under the $3 mark everywhere.
I love how you have the different tiers for every specific type of
class of trades. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's your, I know do you have a specific next goal of getting into more stores, or are you really focused on getting the data back to from Kroger?
Yeah. So we have, I would say, an immediate goal and then the one right after that. So right now is just kind of land the Kroger experiment, make sure that the next basically month of remaining sort of summer primetime season for us goes well. As long as that's solid, we can say look, here are our velocities. Here's how we performed competitively. Here's the average price, all of that information. That's the data that we then want to be able to put into our pitch deck to then go and say, okay, here is our next milestone that we now want to get to in this experiment. And here's what we need to get there. And for us, this data out of Kroger, and right now it looks very positive, tells me that we have a winning product. Now we just need to invest in really growing it, expanding the awareness, doing the marketing, do the in-field sales. Now it's really about commercializing, truly. And you need a lot of money to do that. 1.5 is a small amount of money in this industry. I'm trying to remember the exact quote or exact statistic, but I think I saw somewhere that the average beverage brand needs $3 million to start up. And we've gotten really, really far on $500,000. And it should be said for the record that is very much built on the back of everybody that's worked at this company, because there is a massive opportunity cost to not working in corporate America. And it's only been through the sacrifice of the employees and myself that we've been able to extend this runway as far as we have. Nobody here is raking in money.
How big's your team, if I may ask?
It's ebbed and flowed a little bit with the pandemic again, because we kind of, scaled up a little bit, then had to come back down and, whatnot. So right now I'm the CEO. I have an amazing partner. She is the COO. And then we have 2 fantastic interns. That is the 4 people internal to the team. And then we have a couple broker partners that work externally for us. We have a couple distributor partners. And we have an outsourced manufacturing. So we have a manufacturing partner. So we really have tried to keep it very flexible and nimble so that we can kind of turn up and turn things down as needed, given those are the lessons we've already learned with having to be able to respond quickly to fast changing external environments.
Wow, that was a really good overview of your company. I think we really got the whole brand story, where you started, where you're at now. It's really exciting to see your journey. We're waiting to see the success of all the experiments. We're waiting to try it out in all the stores. I do have somewhat of a personal question. I have some dietary restrictions. I'm not vegan, but are the sparkling teas vegan?
Yes, they're all vegan, all plant-based, all natural.
So when are you looking at getting certified kosher? That's what I require.
I know, right? Right now we're working on non-GMO. That is the current certification that we are working on. So the first one we got was WeBank, the woman-owned business certification process. Now we are working on a product certification as non-GMO. What we were able to do behind the scenes is pull all of the raw materials from all of our suppliers as well as our co-packer to confirm that we are that we are vegan and that we are non-GMO. But the certification process actually is quite expensive and takes a lot of time. And so we're working on non-GMO first to submit all of that and have them give us the thumbs up. And then we'll probably move on to perhaps a vegan one after that, or maybe kosher. There is a lot of different options for us.
And I didn't ask you this, but how did you come up with the name Spritz Tea?
Spritz just sounds fun. It's, like a wine spritzer, which is something I used to do all the time, especially like corporate events where there's always drinks and I don't really like to drink. And so what I would do is they'd have a bartender and I'd be like, can you put it like 2/3 of it as club soda and 1/3 of it as red wine? And we'll just pretend it's rosé because I didn't really want to drink alcohol, but there's still like a lot of peer pressure, even as an adult, to drink. And so it just became a little joke that I was always making wine spritzers at corporate events because I didn't want to be like the annoying person that wasn't drinking, because everyone was like, well, why aren't you drinking? Whatever. But I also didn't want to drink. And so Spritz just kind of stuck with me. And I don't know, it feels bubbly. It feels Spritz, it's light, it's fresh. It's like you spritz perfume, it's kind of got a little bit of a feminine feel to it. And I just really liked the name. So I went with it.
Cool. Wow, that was an awesome journey. I'm just going to shout out Jack Langer just said on LinkedIn Live, he actually runs here, I can put it on the thing. He actually runs a big podcast network.
Cool.
And he thinks it's fascinating. So that's nice of him. Thanks for the comment on LinkedIn Live. It sounds like we're wrapping up. Can't believe it. It's over an hour already. Thank you so much. But I will open it up. I do want to open it up. We are one of the platforms we're on, aside from YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and then restreamed. We're restreamed as an audio podcast on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, and really wherever you could find your favorite podcasts. We're on the brandspotlight.com also. But for our LinkedIn audience, and we have a lot of professionals, obviously, that's what LinkedIn is made of. Is there any specific professionals that you're looking for in terms of brokers, in terms of anything, or are you pretty good on that end?
I mean, I think that the two things that my company needs at this point is, I feel really solid about, again, product market fit. We've got the data that says we've kind of nailed it. Is just continue to expand in the Midwest with retailers and distributors and brokers, and to start to plan our fundraise. And whether that's through traditional micro VCs or a broker partner who wants to do like an SPV or something, we are just beginning that process now. So I expect that we'll likely wrap up our Kroger pilot here in the next few weeks. From a data standpoint, we'll keep selling through, but from an analysis. And then we'll look to see what kind of capital is necessary for the next stage of execution for us. And that's going to probably round out my 2022 is just hitting the fundraising road and seeing what's still out there and what's available and who sees the vision. I think that beverage is missing women. There's so many sets in there, and there's just not a lot of products that are focused on the female. And I think it's a huge gap. We still dominate grocery purchases, and with a fast moving, high velocity good like beverage, we need to have more female focused products.
So in 2 words, smart funding.
Smart money. Give me some smart money.
Thank you so much. Is there any parting words, and how can we find you?
Just kind of the regular one, spritztea.com, SPRITZTEA.com. Same thing at Instagram, at spritztea on Instagram. If anybody wants to try the product, try Spritz 10 is going to be 10% off your first order. Best prices are definitely going to be the 24-pack subscription. But more than that, if you're an entrepreneur or you want to be an entrepreneur or you're a founder or any of those things, the road is long. But Winston Churchill's quote I've found to be the most important thing that I look at every single day, which is success is not final, failure is not fatal, and it's the courage to continue that counts. So go for it, look at the data, understand what the data tells you, good, bad, or ugly, and make decisions off of it. And wish everybody the best.
Thank you so much. It's been fascinating. I love your data-driven approach. That's been actually pretty new for the brands that I've spoken to. A lot of them were more coming from a very entrepreneurial place. This was coming from a very data-driven, including entrepreneurial. Thank you to the audience for listening. As I mentioned, this is episode 5 of the Brand Spotlight. We are generally streamed on LinkedIn Live, Facebook, the Brand Spotlight, YouTube, the Brand Spotlight channel, and then we are restreamed as an audio podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and really anywhere you can listen. Your favorite podcast app, just search the Brand Spotlight. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thanks, Joe.